My name is Carmen Deal. I'm 20 years old, and if you ever want to know your value in a family, wait until there's something to split. In my case, it wasn't a house or an inheritance. It was a college laptop. My older brother Max got a brand new, top-of-the-line MacBook Pro. I'm talking shiny silver, maxed out memory, every creative app pre-installed, Adobe Suite, Final Cut, Logic Pro, you name it. There was even a custom engraving across the back. Go change the world, Max. My parents practically threw a ribbon-cutting ceremony for it. My mom made him stand by the kitchen window to catch the good light, then took 100 photos like she was documenting the birth of a royal baby. My dad stood there with his arms crossed, nodding with solemn pride, the same way he looked at his grill when it cooked steak perfectly. I watched from the doorway, my back pressed against the frame. "This is an investment," Mom said, her voice all soft and glowing. "Our boy is going to change the world with this." Our boy. I heard it and felt something small tuck itself deeper inside my chest. When the photos were done and Max had posted his first unboxing story, my mom finally turned to me. "Oh, and Carmen," she said casually, like she almost forgot I existed, "we've got something for you too." For a second, stupidly, my heart jumped. I pictured a slim laptop box, maybe not as fancy as Max's, but something that was actually mine. Instead, Dad dragged in a beige, dust-covered desktop tower that looked like it had been rescued from an office fire sale in 2006. The monitor was thick and yellowing around the edges. A sticky note was taped dead center on the glass. "Use grateful eyes, gamin, Mom." "Your father's old work computer," Mom said, like she was presenting me with a family heirloom. "Still good. You just have to see it the right way." I stared at it. Thick layer of dust, a fan that rattled when Dad set it down, a faint smell of burnt plastic. "Say thank you," Mom added, her smile tightening. It wasn't a suggestion. "Thank you," I said quietly. Here's what I'd learned by then. Reacting is a trap. If you complain, you're ungrateful. If you accept it, you're resilient. If you quietly do something incredible with the scraps, that's when they panic. So I didn't argue. I didn't point out that Max's investment in his future cost more than my entire savings account, and this relic probably still remembered dial-up. I just wrapped my fingers around the sticky edge of the monitor and hauled it down the hallway to my room. I heard Mom murmur behind me, "She really needs to learn to be grateful," like she hadn't literally written it on a note and slapped it on my face. That was my childhood in one scene. The birthdays where Max got AirPods and I got socks, because you're practical, honey. The holidays where relatives asked Max about his lectures and internships and asked me if I was still into that computer thing. The year my science project was selected for regionals and my parents glanced at the certificate and said, "Oh, that's nice, but have you seen Max's economics paper? His professor said it's brilliant." I wasn't the black sheep. I was the invisible one, the quiet kid in the corner, maintaining the background of their perfect family portrait. Somewhere along the line, I gave up on being visible. I stopped trying to get their attention and started building a world where I didn't need it. The broken PC was the first spark. I dragged the tower onto my tiny desk, coughing as dust flaked off onto my hands. When I hit the power button, the fan wheezed like a dying animal and then went silent. "Of course," I muttered. "You and me both, buddy." I did what I always do when something's broken. I opened it up. The case fought back, screws stripped from years of neglect, plastic cracked along the edges. When I finally pried it off, I stared down into chaos, wires dangling like vines in a forgotten jungle, a power supply that looked scorched, and a motherboard that had definitely seen some things. Most people would have gotten depressed. I felt my pulse speed up. Broken things, abandoned things, that was my specialty. The stuff people tossed at me like punishment, I turned it into puzzles. I spent that night, and the next, hunched over that PC, scrolling through decade-old forum posts, watching grainy YouTube repair videos where the comments were locked 5 years ago, pulling spare parts from dusty towers I bought at garage sales for $5 and a smile. Mom thought I was playing games instead of socializing. Dad assumed I was just doing computer stuff while they watched TV upstairs. Max called from his brand new dorm room to ask if I knew the Hulu password. "Oh, you're still at home?" He laughed. "That sucks. Anyway, text me the login." I texted it. He never asked what I was doing. It took about a week. New power supply cobbled from a scrap machine. a cooling solution that involved a dollar store desk fan, duct tape, and leftover hot glue from my 8th grade science fair. The wiring looked like a conspiracy theory diagram. When I finally hit the power button and the machine actually booted, I let out a laugh that sounded half feral. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't fast, but it was mine. A few days later, late at night, my phone buzzed. Ethan. Ethan. Still awake, mad scientist? Me. Fixing dinosaurs. Ethan. Take a break. I miss your face. Ethan was my boyfriend, the one person who seemed more impressed by my messy desk than Max's engraved MacBook. He popped by the next afternoon, dropping a bag of takeout on my bed and stepping carefully around the towers of scrap metal. Wow, he said, peering into the open case. You really brought this thing back from the dead. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but my chest warmed at the way he said you, not it. He leaned against my desk. So, what's the plan? Just revive zombie PCs forever? I hesitated, then pulled out a notebook from under a pile of cables. Pages of sketches, diagrams, parts lists, side notes, ideas scrawled in the margins, modular slots, cheap replacement panels, student-friendly builds. I want to build something that doesn't die the second one piece does, I said. Like an open framework. Swap parts in and out. Use whatever scraps schools or offices have lying around. Make it repairable on purpose. Ethan's eyebrows rose. Like a Lego PC kit? Kind of, I said, suddenly shy. I've been drawing it forever, but I never had a system I could cannibalize and test it on, until Mom gifted me this beautiful corpse. He laughed, then got quiet. Carmen, that's huge. I shrugged again, because if I let myself feel how badly I wanted it, I might fall apart. On his way out, he paused at the door. You know, if this works, this might be your way out. Out of what? I asked. He gave me a look. He didn't have to answer. Later that night, while my parents watched a cooking show and argued about salt, I sat in the dim glow of the monitor and took photos of my Frankenstein rig. Side panel off, handwritten notes taped to the metal like a mad scientist's journal. Caption. Rebuilt my dad's 2006 Office PC into a modular, repairable desktop. Booted Linux in under 5 minutes. Built mostly from scrap. Feels weirdly personal. I added a few more pictures. No filters, no clickbait, no begging for upvotes. Then I did something I'd never done before. I posted it to Reddit. Just a tiny anonymous post in a tech subreddit where people smarter than me tore bad builds apart and worshipped clever hacks. I tossed my creation into the void, shut off the monitor, and crawled into bed. I woke up to 6,000 upvotes. By lunchtime, it was 17,000. By dinner, my DMs were full. A retired engineer wrote, "If you build this into a kit, I'll buy 5. Another person said, "Where can I donate to make this real?" One message from a nonprofit guy in Detroit asked if I'd consider turning this into something underfunded kids could learn to build from scrap hardware. I sat there in the flickering blue light of my resurrected monitor, hands shaking. All of this from the punishment PC. I didn't have a company or a logo or a pitch deck. I had a half-stable prototype and a notebook full of ideas. But I did have a name, Record, built from scraps, made to last. I bought the domain for $12, threw together a bare-bones site, a rough overview, a couple build photos, a contact form. No one at home noticed the charge on my card. Upstairs, Mom was complaining that Max hadn't posted enough pictures of his laptop. Down the hall, Dad was rewatching a game he'd already seen twice. My phone buzzed. Ethan again. Ethan. Saw your post. You're kind of blowing up. Me. Terrifying. Ethan. Terrifying is just exciting with bad lighting. I'm proud of you. A second notification slid down over his message. A new DM from someone I didn't expect. Lauren P. Ethan's ex-girlfriend. Congrats on your little project. Ethan always said you were good with computers. I stared at the screen. A warm rush of adrenaline, a cold prickle of warning. I told myself it didn't matter, that I could just ignore it and focus on Record, on the people who believed in what I was building. Back then, I thought the worst thing that could happen was strangers on the internet not liking my idea. I had no idea the real trouble would start when the people who knew me best finally realized what I'd built out of the junk they threw at me. I thought the Reddit post would fade after a day or two. Just a blip, a lucky accident. But the internet had other plans. By the next morning, my phone looked like it had caught fire. Upvotes climbing, notifications exploding, messages from people with job titles I couldn't even pronounce. A retired engineer wrote, "Kid, this is genius. If you ever make this into a kit, I'll buy 5. Another asked where to donate. A nonprofit guy said he worked with underfunded schools in Detroit and wanted to discuss using my concept to teach students engineering basics, with literal scrap hardware. I just stared at the screen, numb, while the old PC's fan clicked in the background like it was applauding me. Within a week, my life had split into two worlds. World 1. Upstairs, where my family watched Netflix, argued about passwords, and gushed over Max's latest dorm selfies. World 2. Down in the garage, my dimly lit sanctuary, where rapport silently began to take shape. I'd cleared space between lawn chairs and the broken snowblower, stacked cheap tables, lined them with screwdrivers, soldering tools, and labeled bins. It wasn't a workspace. It was a confession that I needed more than what this house ever offered me. No one noticed. No one asked why I was sleeping only 3 hours a night, or why the garage light stayed on until dawn, or why I kept rushing out with brown paper packages for the post office. Mom simply told me, "Carmen, don't leave tools lying around. They look messy." Dad grumbled about the smell of solder. Max sent me a text. Max, "Hey, you still at home?" Me, "Yeah." Max, "LOL, brutal. Anyway, what's our Hulu login?" That was the extent of his interest in my life. Meanwhile, Ethan was the opposite. He came over almost every night, dropping off food and offering to help pack orders, even though he had a full-time internship downtown. He'd kneel beside me, reading my scribbles on envelopes. "You really built all this?" he'd murmur, awe in his voice. I'd shrug like it was nothing. He'd shake his head. "Carmen, this is something big. I hope you know that." He kissed my forehead, brushed my hair back, and told me to sleep at least once this week. I pretended not to melt. But Lauren, his ex, was still hovering like a shadow. Every couple of days, she commented something flirty on his posts or sent him a nostalgic DM about the good old days, which he ignored. But I noticed, and she noticed that I noticed. One night, right after Ethan left, my phone buzzed with a message request. Lauren P. "Careful not to burn out. Big dreams can be heavy to carry alone." I stared at it. It wasn't even subtle, sweet on the surface, sour underneath. I didn't reply, but it stayed with me. The second Reddit post changed everything. I uploaded cleaner photos, linked to the domain I'd bought for $12, wrote a simple guide. No hype, no marketing, just the truth. It went viral within hours. Not just Reddit, tech forums, Discord servers, Facebook groups full of tinkerers. Even a moderator DM'd me. "Are you aware this hit Hacker News? You're blowing up." I wasn't aware. But when the orders started rolling in, actual orders, people wanting real kits, I realized the world expected me to build something bigger than scraps. I bartered for parts at local repair shops, bought broken machines in bulk from a guy who sold old office equipment out of a storage locker, printed casing templates with a borrowed 3D printer. I sold my childhood bike, my half-functioning Xbox, an old coin collection my dad said was worthless anyway. I turned the garage into Wrecker HQ, 15 feet away from the fridge my mom stocked only when Max visited. Still, no one in my family noticed. No one asked why packages were stacking up. No one questioned the buzz of tools or the smell of melted plastic. I was a ghost in my own house. A productive one, but a ghost nonetheless. Then, out of nowhere, Max came home. No warning, no context. 3 duffel bags, a Bluetooth speaker, and a grin so wide it made me suspicious. Mom nearly burst into tears. "Oh, Max, my baby boy!" Dad turned the TV to ESPN before Max even sat down. Nobody asked why he was home on a random Friday. But I noticed. And more importantly, I noticed what he noticed. The first time he walked past the garage, he stopped dead. His gaze locked on the setup, the assembled kits, stacked boxes labeled Recore Week 4. My whiteboard with sketches, notes, prototype layouts, tools arranged with purpose. "You building stuff?" he asked. I didn't look up from my soldering pen. "Yeah," he scoffed. "Okay, Ms. Elon," and walked away like I'd said I was knitting a scarf. But the seed had been planted. Throughout the weekend, he kept circling, hovering, pretending to check the laundry room and accidentally peeking into the garage, picking up tools like he knew what they were. At dinner, Mom asked him about school again and again, ignoring the fact that I had just shipped 32 kits that week. Dad bragged about Max's leadership potential. Mom said his professor said he could run his own company someday. I almost choked. Ethan texted, "He's sniffing around your work. Watch him." I knew Ethan was right. Max didn't get curious unless he saw a spotlight. And for the first time in my life, the spotlight wasn't on him. Sunday afternoon, I came home from the post office balancing receipts and found Max sitting at my desk. He was spinning slowly in my chair like a cartoon villain. Your website's clean, he said, tapping the monitor. Bit basic, but it loads fast. I froze. Why are you touching my stuff? He smirked. Relax. Just curious. Didn't know you were building a whole startup down here. He leaned back like the CEO of a company he hadn't founded. Mom and Dad don't know either, by the way. He said it like he enjoyed having the secret more than he cared about the truth. And that's when something inside me finally clicked. Max wasn't just curious. He was uncomfortable. For once in his life, he wasn't the center of the room. For once, he was watching me build something he couldn't understand. What do you want, Max? I asked. He shrugged casually, but his eyes were too sharp. Just saying, if this thing takes off, maybe let me know. Could be fun to collaborate. Collaborate? I repeated. Yeah, you do the nerdy stuff. I handle the pitch. Investors love a good face. You know I've got charisma. I stared at him. This man once crashed a school computer trying to open a zip file. Now he wanted to be the face of my work? I didn't argue. I didn't have to. Because 2 days later, something happened that made collaboration the last thing on earth I'd ever consider with him. Something that would change everything, and would be the first step toward losing my family completely. Max didn't confront me again the next morning. He didn't need to. Because when I opened my laptop at 8:12 a.m., rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, a notification flashed across my screen. An alert from a startup forum I'd joined months ago. New thread posted in DIY Tech Kits by user Max Innovates. My stomach dropped before I even clicked. The title punched me in the chest. Coming soon. Cork Crate, modular DIY PC kits from our family to yours. I felt the air leave my lungs. I scrolled, and there they were. My photos, my prototype, my handwritten notes taped to the side panel, my layout, my build. Renamed, rebranded, claimed by Max. He'd even written a description. My family and I have been working for months on a modular repairable PC kit. Big things coming. Stay tuned. My family. I stared at the screen so long my vision blurred. Then my hands went cold. Because suddenly everything Max had done made sense. The circling, the hovering in the garage, the sudden interest in my workspace, the fake casual comments, the photo taking. He had been gathering material, not to help, not to collaborate, but to take. It wasn't that he wanted to join me. He wanted to replace me. I didn't knock on his door. I kicked it open so hard it smacked the wall. Max looked up from his bed, startled for half a second before his face slid into a smug smile. Oh, he said lightly, you saw it. Saw it? The world tilted. My voice was so quiet it scared even me. What is that? He shrugged, like he'd borrowed my sweater, not my life. It's just a teaser, he said. Relax. Not like I said you weren't involved. My pulse was a dull roar in my ears. You posted my work, I said. Our work, he corrected smugly. No, I whispered. Mine. Max sighed like I was the dramatic one. Carmen, come on. We're family. He said the word like it was armor he could hide behind. We're stronger together. Think about it. You build the tech stuff. I handle the pitch and investors. I'm the face, you're the brains. We split everything. I stared at him, stunned. Max, the boy who once failed a PowerPoint class, wanted to be the face of my company? He leaned back, linking his fingers behind his head. Besides, he added with a grin, Mom and Dad already love the name. The name, I echoed? Yeah, Cork Crate has a ring to it, right? I didn't answer. I walked out. Not because I was done arguing, but because I knew something Max didn't. I was smarter than him, and I had receipts. Back in the garage, hands trembling, I began locking everything down, encrypting folders, changing every password, backing up files to offline drives, installing lockboxes for my prototypes. Then I wrote a cease and desist letter, a real one, printed it, signed it, slipped it under his door. He laughed so loudly I heard it through the hallway. Carmen, seriously, this is pathetic. He crumpled it and tossed it onto the floor. You really think some stupid letter's gonna stop me? He taunted. I didn't answer, because I already knew what would. First, I sent screenshots of everything to the tech journalist who'd featured Wrecker. He responded in 5 minutes. This is blatant IP theft. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Then I forwarded everything to Max's university. Because guess what? Using campus resources to steal someone else's intellectual property and present it as your own? That's academic fraud, especially when the IP wasn't his. The next morning, the Cork Crate thread was gone. Max, however, wasn't. He stormed into the garage mid-packaging run, face red, voice cracking. You reported me to the school? I protected my work, I said calmly. You're unbelievable, he shouted. No, I replied. I'm done letting you cash checks off work you didn't do. He choked on his own breath for a moment, speechless with fury. Then he left, and for a moment the garage was quiet. Too quiet, because I knew him, and I knew my parents. And quiet in this family never lasted long. I didn't have to wait. That evening, Mom cornered me in the living room, arms folded tightly over her chest. "Carmen," she said, with that voice she used when she thought she was being wise, "your father and I have been talking." Dad stood beside her like a bouncer who'd been paid in coupons. Max sulked in the back like a toddler who'd been denied a cookie. "We think," Mom continued, "that you should forgive your brother. Keep this in the family." Dad nodded in solemn agreement. "Be the bigger person," he said. "Let this go." My heart went cold. There it was. The family script. Forgive the favorite. Sacrifice the scapegoat. Protect the golden child at all costs. I looked at Max. He didn't look sorry. He looked smug. He thought I'd fold because I always had. Not this time. "I'm not giving him my work," I said. Mom's nostrils flared. "You're being dramatic." "You're being unfair," I corrected. Dad scowled. "Watch your tone, young lady." I stood up. "No," I said firmly. "I'm protecting myself." Mom shook her head slowly like she pitied me. "You're going to regret pushing your family away, Carmen." Maybe I would. But I had loved this family for 20 years. And in return, they'd given me scraps, then wanted to own the things I built from them. I walked past them without another word. Back to my garage. Back to my work. Back to Record. 2 days later, everything changed. For the first time, someone outside the internet took real notice of me. I received an email from a nonprofit in Vancouver. "We loved your pilot kits. We'd like you to present Record at the Youth Tech Summit. Flight and hotel included." I stared at the screen, stunned. A stage. A spotlight. An opportunity so far outside my family's world that they couldn't touch it. I called Ethan immediately. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" he asked breathlessly. "Nothing's wrong," I said, voice cracking. "Everything's really, really good." When I told him, he laughed. A soft, proud, breathless laugh I'll never forget. "Carmen," he whispered, "this is your moment. You earned this." I swallowed, feeling tears sting my eyes. "Do you really think so?" "I know so," he said, "and I'll be right here cheering for you." But as I booked my flight that night, a knot formed in my stomach. Not from fear, not from excitement, but from certainty. Because the moment my parents realized someone else was finally applauding me, they were going to panic. And when they panicked, they were going to do something unthinkable. I felt it like a storm in my bones. This wasn't just the start of Record's rise. It was the beginning of my family's unraveling. Stop! The flight to Vancouver was the first time I'd ever been on a plane alone. No family vacation, no school trip. Just me, a backpack full of prototype pieces and a gnawing mixture of terror and hope. When the plane lifted off, I stared out the window and watched my city shrink beneath me. The same rooftops where I'd soldered parts at midnight, the same street where my parents forgot to ask me how my day was, the same house where Max tried to steal the thing I'd poured my soul into. For the first time in my life, I was rising above all of it. The Youth Tech Summit was held in a hotel ballroom so polished it felt like a simulation. Huge screens, bright lights, banners higher than my house. Behind the stage, a staff member pinned a lanyard to my shirt. Carmen Dial, Rector Founder. Founder. The word hit harder than any applause. When I stepped onto the stage, the lights were blinding. 600 educators, developers, engineers, nonprofit leaders, all eyes on me. I thought I'd choke, but then I saw my Frankenstein prototype on the projector, a machine built from scraps that my family shoved at me like punishment, and something clicked into place. This wasn't a speech. It was a reclamation. I walked them through the busted PC, the cheap parts, the late nights, the idea of building something durable from what society throws away. I ended with a single line. I wasn't given much, but I was given enough to build something better. The applause was thunderous, a sound so loud I felt it in my ribs. Afterward, an organizer handed me a badge. "You made the short list," she said, "for the non-equity funding interviews. Up to 100,000. My hands shook so hard I had to pocket them. I found a quiet corner, sat down, and called Ethan. He picked up instantly. "How was it?" I laughed, still shaking. "I think I just changed my whole life." He exhaled softly. "I'm so proud of you, Carmen." But before I could say anything back, my phone buzzed again. Another notification. Then another. Then 10 more. I frowned, opening one of them. A message from Max. "Mom saw a tweet. She's freaking out, LOL." Before I could respond, he sent a screenshot. A Facebook post. From my mother. My photo. Standing on the Vancouver stage, holding my prototype. Captioned. "So proud of our brilliant daughter. Always knew she'd take our family business far. Hashtag record, hashtag family innovation, hashtag we built this. I nearly dropped my phone. Family business? We? We built this? I felt heat rising in my face, anger so sharp it made my hands tremble. I hadn't even had time to wipe off my stage makeup, and somehow my mother had already rewritten history. The comments were worse. You raised her so well. What a supportive family story. Can't wait to support your company. Such proud parents. Proud? Supportive? The woman who handed me a dying PC with a sticky note telling me to use grateful eyes was now claiming she raised a tech prodigy. I closed the app, not because I couldn't read it, but because if I read even one more lie, I might scream in the middle of the summit hall. Instead, I opened my laptop that night and edited the About page on the Record website. I added a short section. Record began with a discarded PC and a young woman who learned early that support doesn't always come from the places you expect. Sometimes you build alone. Sometimes you build because no one else ever handed you something that worked. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The next day, I was networking after a panel when a woman tapped my shoulder. Are you Carmen Deal? Yeah, I said. She smiled. My brother lives in Ridgeview. He sent me your story. His exact words were, the kid they gave the broken computer to? She just got a standing ovation in Vancouver. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. She handed me her card. I work with a district in Colorado, 12 schools. If you're interested, we'd like to pilot Record. We'll fund your travel. My fingers tightened around the thin cardstock. 12 schools. 12 times bigger than anything I'd done. Think about it, she said. We believe in what you're building. I stood there long after she walked away, card in hand, heart pounding. People who had never met me, never dismissed me, ignored me, belittled me, believed in me more than the people who'd lived with me for 20 years. It felt like finally exhaling after drowning underwater. When I landed back home, the house felt wrong. Too tidy, too quiet, too staged. Mom was chopping salad in the kitchen as if a cooking show was filming. 3 plates set. Dad wearing a weirdly pleasant smile. Max leaning in the hallway like he'd been waiting to deliver a punchline. Welcome home, Mom chirped. I didn't respond. I didn't sit. Didn't even put down my jacket. I went straight to the garage. Except, it wasn't the garage anymore. My table had been shoved into a corner, my bins rearranged, my whiteboard wiped clean, my tools moved. And at the center of the room, a new folding table, a ring light aimed at it, a notepad with Max's name scribbled at the top. I stared at it, numb. What is this? I whispered. Mom stepped into the doorway. Oh, that's just for Max, she said brightly. He needs space to shoot some pitch content. You know, our company's next phase. Very exciting. My heart dropped like a stone. Our company? I repeated. Dad nodded. We were thinking of doing a joint video, real origin story vibes. You, Max, the first prototype, family teamwork. Max smirked at me, leaning against the doorframe. Thought you'd like it. I laughed. A quiet, cold, humorless laugh. You were never in the origin story. Max blinked. Dad snapped upright like I'd insulted a flag. Carmen, he warned. This attitude... No, I said, cutting him off. We're not doing this. Mom folded her arms. We're trying to help. By hijacking my workspace, I asked, and filming a fake narrative? You're being ungrateful, she snapped. Ungrateful. The word echoed like a curse. The family motto, the go-to accusation, the weapon they used whenever I stopped letting them step on me. I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up the ring light, unplugged it, and set it gently against the wall. Then I moved my table back into the center of the garage, my garage, and pulled down the signs they'd taped up. Dad scoffed. Mom rolled her eyes. Max muttered something about drama. I taped a note inside the garage door. Black Sharpie on white paper. Not a family business, not a group project, not for sale. That night, I packed my prototypes, my notebooks, my tools. By morning, I had booked a one-way ticket to Colorado for the district pilot. I changed my shipping address. I paid off the rest of the mortgage. Then I called the bank. Hi, I said. I'd like to remove 2 co-signers from the monthly contribution agreement. The clerk asked a simple question. Are you the primary payer? I breathed out. For the first time, proud. Yep, I have been for 5 months. It processed in 24 hours. 6 days later, my mother texted. Why does the mortgage say $0 due from US? I replied, because I'm no longer investing in ungrateful partners. I turned my phone off and walked into a future where no one could steal what I built again. Leaving home should have felt dramatic. A slammed door, a tearful goodbye, a final fight. Instead, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens after a storm tears everything apart. when there's nothing left to argue about. I loaded everything I owned into 2 suitcases and 3 heavily taped boxes. Record prototypes, notebooks, tools, USB drives with backups of backups. Every piece of the life I'd built in secret. Ethan helped carry everything to the airport shuttle. He squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing," he said softly. I nodded, even though my throat was tight. Leaving didn't hurt. What hurt was realizing my family never tried to stop me. Colorado was crisp and open and nothing like home. The district that invited me had a small office waiting, bare, dusty, but mine. For the first time, Ricor wasn't squeezed between a snowblower and a lawn chair. It had space, room to grow, room to breathe. I signed documents, walked school hallways, watched kids stare in awe as they snapped recycled parts together and powered on their first modular machine. One boy grinned at me and said, "My big sister says I'm stupid. Now I'm going to show her how to build one." I felt my chest tighten. That kid didn't know it, but he was me. And suddenly I knew. I hadn't just built a tech kit. I'd built something that could rewrite the stories of kids who'd been told they weren't enough. A week later, after another successful school demo, my phone buzzed. An email from a production facility in Oregon. They had seen a Ricor kit in a school video and wanted to talk about scaling. National distribution, warehousing, manufacturing, panels laser cut in batches instead of one by one on my shaky 3D printer. I stared at the email so long my coffee went cold. Scaling meant something I'd never dared to dream. Ricor wouldn't just be a garage project, it could become a brand. A real one. I scheduled a call. They walked me through cost breakdowns, supply chains, inventory predictions. I walked them through modular designs, scrap sourcing models, and durability tests. By the end of the call, they sent over a tentative agreement. I didn't cry, but I did sit very, very still, because the universe was offering me a bigger life than the one my family tried forcing me into. Of course, my parents found out. They always did. I learned later Mom had set a literal Google alert for my name. So when a local reporter emailed wanting to do a family feature on innovation and parental support, I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was the email's opening line. "Your mother said she'd be happy to do the interview with you." With me. As if we'd built Ricor together in matching aprons. I typed a reply. That must have been my business partner's evil twin. No signature, just sent. The reporter never wrote back. An hour later, my phone rang. Mom. She didn't say hello. She just started. "We were just thinking it would be nice to celebrate as a family. You've done so much. We're so proud." "Proud," I repeated quietly. "Yes, and we just want to be included. That's not wrong, is it, Carmen?" "No," I said, "but what you're doing is..." Silence. "You tried to take over my company," I continued. "You tried to rebrand it as a family business. You let Max post my work under his fake name, and now that other people are celebrating me, you want credit." "Carmen, you're twisting..." "No," I said, "I'm finally untwisting." Another long silence. Then her voice cracked. "You've changed." I closed my eyes. "Yeah," I said softly. "So have the locks." I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Later that night, Max texted. A last attempt to keep a foot in the door. "If you ever need marketing help, I'm down. Just send me your pitch deck. I'll boost it." I opened a blank PDF, typed one sentence in white text on a black background. "Wrecker has no open roles for liars." Sent it. He didn't respond. He never did again. These days, I work from a small office in Boulder. Not fancy. Concrete floor, flickering ceiling light, secondhand chairs. But it's mine. I hired a small team. Real people. People who believed in the mission before it was cool. People who don't twist words or steal credit or pretend scraps weren't gifts. Sometimes, at the end of the day, I look at the wall where we hang thank you drawings from the kids we work with. Robots, computers, superheroes with my curly hair drawn under the cape. We've shipped over 2,000 kits to underfunded schools in 3 states. And every order is a reminder that I built something from nothing. Not because someone gave me a head start. Not because someone pushed me. But because they didn't. Because no one was cheering. Because no one gave me a laptop. Because no one believed the quiet girl in the corner could build anything worth noticing. Turns out that was enough fuel for a lifetime. People sometimes ask about my origin story. I keep it short. I started with a broken PC, I tell them. But the truth is longer. I started with scraps. With silence. With a family who taught me my worth only when there was something to claim. And I learned something they never did. You don't need applause to matter. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need anyone to hand you the tools. Sometimes all you need is dust on your hands, a stubborn heart, and a reason to pick up the screwdriver.